Israel calls it a new era of relations with the Arab world. The Palestinians call it a betrayal. The United Arab Emirates agrees to normalize ties with Israel, drawing both praise and condemnation. Is this a step towards peace or a stumble in the wrong direction? I'm Ayalon, and today's newsmaker is the agreement known as the Abraham Accord. The UAE has become the first ever Gulf nation to normalize ties with the State of Israel. It broke a long-standing but unofficial rule that the Arab world would withhold diplomatic relations with Israel until the Palestinian issue was resolved. The Emiratis were quick to point out that under the agreement, Israel has suspended its plans to annex part of the occupied West Bank. But the Palestinian people say this deal was a complete betrayal, and their concern is that other countries in the Gulf could follow suit. So, is the plight of Palestinians being brushed aside? And will this deal make the region safer or only more tense? Natalie Pahonen reports.
The United Arab Emirates will become the third Arab nation to have full diplomatic ties with Israel. The landmark accord was brokered by the Trump administration.
By uniting two of America's closest and most capable partners in the region, something which said could not be done, this deal is a significant step towards building a more peaceful, secure, and prosperous Middle East.
The UAE will normalize ties with Israel in exchange for Israel suspending its plans to annex parts of the occupied West Bank.
This is a win-win deal. It's a win-win deal for peace in the region, and it brings actually a ray of hope in a very difficult time in our region, not known really for good times anyway.
It also means the UAE and Israel will be able to have an open economic relationship. There'll be bilateral agreements in areas like tourism, energy, technology, communications, and security. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he expects other Arab states will follow the UAE's lead.
אני צופה שמדינות נוספות יצטרפו למעגל השלום איתנו. זהו מהפך היסטורי שמקדם את השלום גם עם העולם הערבי, ובסופו של דבר יקדם את השלום, שלום אמיתי, מפוקח, בטוח, גם עם הפלסטינים.
The accord is being touted as a foreign policy victory for both President Donald Trump ahead of the November election and for Netanyahu, who has boasted about his ability to build relations with Arab states. It comes after Trump unveiled his controversial Middle East plan in January that would pave the way for Israel to annex parts of the occupied West Bank and the Jordan Valley. This new deal has put a temporary hold on those plans, but Netanyahu has stressed they remain on the table.
אני מזכיר לכם שבהסכם הנוכחי לא רק שישראל לא נסוגה ממטר מרובע אחד, אלא שתוכנית טראמפ כוללת, לבקשתי, את החלת הריבונות של ישראל על שטחים נרחבים ביהודה ושומרון.
Palestinians have rejected the agreement. They've called it a betrayal.
Normalization with Israel is treason, and what the UAE did is the highest betrayal of the Palestinian people, a betrayal of an Arab pillar and the Palestinian cause.
The UAE's move runs counter to a 2002 Arab League-endorsed plan. Under that initiative, Arab states were to establish diplomatic ties with Israel in exchange for Israel's withdrawal from occupied territory and its acceptance of a Palestinian state.
Unfortunately, nowadays, most of the Arab countries are looking for their own interests at the expense of the Palestinian cause.
The UAE says it took a pragmatic decision with its own needs in mind. This will be remembered as an historic agreement for the Gulf nation, but also one that has blindsided Palestinians. Natalie Pahonen, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now from Malton, UK is Sultan Barakat. He's the founding director of the Center for Conflict and Humanitarian Studies at the Doha Institute. In Jerusalem is Danny Ayalon. He's Israel's former deputy foreign minister and was once the ambassador to the U.S. And in Chicago, we have Ali Abunimah. He's the co-founder of the pro-Palestinian website, the electronic Intifada. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Danny Ayalon, this deal is being hailed by both Israel and the UAE as the right step, as a very good step towards peace. But the Palestinians have rejected this deal. They even call it a betrayal. So the fundamental issue that has been plaguing Israel for many decades, namely to come to an agreement with the Palestinians, have actually not been reached with this deal, quite on the contrary.
Well, it's unfortunate, and the Palestinian intransigence has been going on now for 80 years, even more. And if I can use the metaphor, a common metaphor, the tail cannot wag the dog. And what the Palestinians have tried to do is really hold all the region hijacked under their extremist demands. Take an example of this UAE agreement with Israel. We have now suspended and probably cancelled any plans to annex any part of the West Bank, just as the Palestinians demanded. So when we said, okay, we're going to have sovereignty, they cried. Now when we say we will not have sovereignty, they also cried. And this is unfortunate because by definition, any and every peace agreement in the region is going to make this region more stable, more prosperous. And quite honestly, it is time for the Palestinians to take care of their own interest and not think of other countries' interest. For instance, the Gulf countries, their main interest is Israeli technology because climate change, they need to meet major challenges of food security, water availability, energy even as well. And let alone threats from the region, from extremists and from the Ayatollah in Tehran. So by doing that and by more countries coming in, it should encourage the Palestinians to first and foremost leave the politics of the past, of saying no, no, no to everything, and come to the negotiation table. We have been waiting for them. We have negotiated with them. We have given them so many concessions, but they always said no. They wanted either more demands or they just broke down negotiations.
Ali, under this deal, the UAE is now normalizing ties with Israel in exchange for Israel suspending its planned annexation of parts of the West Bank. On paper, seems like a win for the Palestinian side. It seems at least that there is an upside, no?
I'm sorry I'm smiling. I was just remembering a few years ago when Danny Ayalon tried to humiliate the Turkish ambassador by putting him in a small chair, which shows just how much Danny Ayalon knows. What does that have to do with this? Well, I was just explaining why I was smiling because it's not good news.
Why don't you address the question and stop just veering off? Because you have no good answers, I guess. So you come up with things from the past. Answer the question.
Ayalon. Yes, Mr. Ayalon, this is not a shin bet interrogation, so please don't interrupt me.
No, it's just an honest discussion. And
gentlemen, could we get back to the discussion again? Ali, why is this deal so upsetting to you? Israel is suspending annexation of the West Bank, so something that at least in the short term, something that Palestinians ought to be happy about. But you're clearly upset. Why?
That's obviously a lie, because Benjamin Netanyahu said very clearly that he hasn't abandoned annexation. He's still committed to it. And more important than the formal declaration of annexation is what's happening on the ground. And there we see Israel continues to steal Palestinian land, to kill Palestinians, to destroy Palestinian homes in occupied Jerusalem and throughout the West Bank, in order to continue to colonize the land and expand Israel's illegal settlements. Let me read you what Abdullah bin Zayed, the foreign minister of the United Arab Emirates, tweeted on July 27th, 2014. He tweeted, "Israel kills children." That was during Israel's 51-day war of atrocities on Gaza.
I understand, Ali,
Israel
but this is
killed,
6 years later, and the UAE has now decided to normalize ties. Let's stay on this deal. Let's stay in 2020.
Well, no, but I mean, we can't stay in 2020 without dealing with the facts of the situation. Abdullah bin Zayed tweeted that while Israel was killing an average of 11 children a day in Gaza, he also called for Israeli leaders to be tried by the International Criminal Court. 4 years later, 6 years later, excuse me, Abdullah bin Zayed is referring to these same Israeli leaders as their excellencies and licking their boots as the other UAE leaders are. But what has changed on the ground? Nothing has changed.
So how do you explain this change of heart then?
Sorry?
How do you explain this change of heart on the part of the UAE?
That's exactly what I want to get to. It's pure opportunism. The UAE is one of the most repressive dictatorships in the region. And so this is an opportunity also to express solidarity to the many, many Emirati citizens who feel anger and shame and disgust at what their rulers have done, but who cannot speak out against it because of the fear of what the regime in Abu Dhabi will do to them.
Well, let's bring in Sultan for a second here. Sultan, then put it in perspective then. Why would the UAE agree to a deal? Clearly, Israel is pleased with this deal. The United States is pleased with this deal. Why would the UAE abandon its previous position and agree to normalize ties with Israel?
Well, to start with, I don't really see this as a peace agreement between Israel and United Arab Emirates. United Arab Emirates, as a sovereign state, is free and can do whatever relations it does with any other state. And obviously, they have chosen to establish relationships with Israel. The issue here, I think, is that they have tried to hide it behind the Palestinian cause, and in a way, reuse the Palestinian cause again, but this time in a quite outrageous way that is seen by the Arab street and the Palestinians alike. The circumstances now are very different. The United Arab Emirates does no longer have the peer pressure it used to get from Arab states because the Arab League is in such a chaotic condition, nor do they even have the pressure from the Gulf GCC Council. And obviously, they've taken a counter position, an anti-position of the Arab street, starting from 2010 with the Arab uprisings throughout the Arab world. Now, that has led them into a very unique and very odd position in the Arab world. And I think they started to find many more similarities with Israel and its expansionist policy, with its use of security as a threat across the region and so on, more common with Israel than they have with their immediate neighbors. They're talking peace with the Israelis. Meanwhile, they have a problem with Qatar, they have a problem in Yemen, they have a problem with Iran, all their neighbors, and Oman as well. So it's not really as simple as they try to portray. I can see and understand the opportunism that Ali referred to, in that the United Arab Emirates desperately need the United States to be on its side. And they have chosen, by having this relationship with Israel, they will win with or without Trump. They will win Trump in the immediate term, because if Trump will see them as having helped him in his elections, as will Benjamin Netanyahu. But even if Trump is not elected, I think it would be very, very difficult, even for a democratic government coming in the United States, to distance the United Arab Emirates, having started talks with Israel.
Danny,
so
obviously, let me just jump in. Danny, obviously this comes at a very good time for Prime Minister Netanyahu, because he's on trial for corruption charges. He's been accused of poor handling of the pandemic. We're seeing daily protests against him in the state of Israel. Is this a deal also to save his leadership in Israel? Is this driven by him trying to stay in power?
Well, no, I think it's mainly a strategic decision. I don't think that this deal will change much his numbers in the polls. And we have really seen that his polls did not go up People are upset, of course, with his upcoming trial, with the corona situation, with the economic situation. So I don't think this will help him much, and this is why I don't think that he will call for elections.
I see. Well, certainly one person who is triumphant about this deal is Donald Trump and his advisor, Jared Kushner, who brokered the deal in the back, Ali Abunimah. What do you make of the position of the United States here? Clearly, they did not take your concerns, meaning the concerns on the part of the Palestinian people, into consideration.
No, of course not. And you know, we don't need to waste time on the history of the American bias towards Israel, which has become more extreme with every administration. But I think the U.S. approach of Kushner and the others in the administration, who are even more pro-Israel than many Israelis, is this fantasy that the question of Palestine and the question of Israel's oppression of the Palestinians can be bypassed and made to go away with this so-called outside-in peace, the idea that making deals with the UAE or Bahrain or Oman or whatever other pliant-friendly dictatorship will somehow weaken the Palestinians and force them to eventually accept surrender to Israel. But that's a fantasy when you consider the reality on the ground, that today Palestinians are the absolute majority of the population within historic Palestine, what is today Israel, the occupied West Bank and the occupied Gaza Strip. And Israel, even with the cooperation of other dictatorships like the UAE, will not be able to make these Palestinians disappear, will not be able to force them to live under a racist, Jewish supremacist apartheid regime in their own country forever. Yeah. Israel's day of reckoning will come, and the fantasy and hope of people like Danny Ayalon that the United Arab Emirates or Bahrain or Djibouti or Sudan is going to rescue Israel from having to end its system of occupation, apartheid, and settler colonialism is the ultimate Zionist.
Mr. Abunimah, if I may just interrupt a second, Mr. Abunimah, I have news for you. It's not just Bahrain and Oman and the Emirates and Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and Sudan and Morocco and Tunisia. Many, many others will come, and you know why? They are sick and tired of the Palestinians ruining their society. All of a sudden, look at the cynicism of Mr. Abunimah. All these countries are dictatorships. You're talking about dictatorships. These countries have showered billions of money over you as benefactors, and they were good for you to get their money. Now, all of a sudden, because they make peace with Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East, they are dictatorship. Come on, wisen up and wake up. And if you want to help your people, come to the negotiation table and negotiate with honesty and with peace. Israel will not go away. Israel will not disappear. We are happy to share the land with the Palestinians, like as we have agreed in 1937, the Peel Commission, the partition. 1947, the UN partition. We agreed, you did not. 1967, we agreed, you did not. 2000, Camp David. We agreed,
could this deal between the UAE and Israel? Could this deal between the UAE and Israel force the Palestinians' hands? Because you already mentioned a couple of countries, Bahrain, Oman, Qatar, Kuwait, perhaps even Saudi Arabia, who might be next to normalize ties with Israel, leaving the Palestinians obviously in a much more difficult situation.
Not at all, because because contrary to the mythology, the Arab dictatorships, and I've always called them dictatorships, have never been of much support to the Palestinian cause, sadly. And Danny Ayalon is right. Many of these dictatorships have betrayed the Palestinian cause and have been dealing secretly with Israel's occupation regime for many, many decades. And that has not helped Israel. In the long run, Israel is facing setbacks on every front. Indeed, we saw recently part of the logic of this alliance between the UAE dictatorship and the Israeli occupation regime is to confront Iran. But Israel just suffered a spectacular and humiliating defeat at the UN Security Council when 11 countries voted against the U.S.
No,
resolution.
They did not. They did not.
Sorry,
well,
11
again,
abstained.
Let me bring in Sultan here. Let me bring in Sultan. Allow me to bring in
I
Sultan
will
here
not
just for a second. Sultan, many people have called this a geopolitical earthquake, regardless on which side you may stand on this issue. Do you think it'll change the dynamics in the region in the long run, short and long term?
I think so. I think that
this is a question for Sultan. This is a question for Sultan, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Sultan, go ahead.
I think in the short term, it will raise the level of threat in the Gulf in particular. Bringing Israel in such a formal, open way into the Arabian Gulf, or the Persian Gulf as known to the Iranians, is going to cause a lot of tension. And that is maybe what Israel actually would like to happen. Israel has been trying to provoke Iran for quite a bit of time, not to take direct action, Israeli action against the Iranians, but to push the Americans to take action against the Iranians, very similar to what they've done in the days of Saddam Hussein. And I think coming so far east in their presence, and then there will be security threats for their presence in the Middle East and so on, we will see no end to this strategy. And it will never stop by convincing the Arab states to be friendly to Israel. It will go on and on until all Muslim world is signing up with Israel. And I think it goes back to the very original question you started with. Will this lead to peace? I don't think it will. I think it will make the situation much more complex in the region without addressing the core issue of equality and freedom for the Palestinians. I think the Israelis will find it extremely difficult to move forward, even when they claim to be a democracy occupying another group of people, their land. Every day they're pulling down houses, killing civilians. It's not going to wash with the Arab street and certainly with the Muslim world. And I think the sooner Israel realizes that, the better it is for its integration in the region.
Danny, your response. Let's give Danny a chance to respond here. Sultan is saying in the short term, this looks good for Israel, but in the long term, this is going to leave Israel actually more exposed. What do you say to that?
Actually, it's quite the opposite. By the way, there are more Israelis, babies and civilians that were murdered brutally by Palestinian terrorists than the other way around. The only reason we are there is just to protect ourselves. We have offered the Palestinians to withdraw from the entire area, but they did not want that. They do not really want, and you can hear Abunimah, it's so obvious, they do not want to build a Palestinian state. There has never been in history a Palestinian state. They just want to destroy our states. And what can I do? I don't have to apologize to Mr. Abunimah. We are not going to let them destroy us. Quite the contrary. If the Palestinians thought that they can sit back and relax, and the Arab world or the UN or anyone will bring Israel on a silver plate to them, they are wrong. The only way for them to make peace is to rely on themselves. Come to the negotiation table in an honest way, in a worthwhile way, without preconditions, and negotiate.
Ali,
otherwise, they can continue and they can cry about other countries. Israel is a strong country. It's a proud country. Our technology and our abilities in any way.
Ali, we have 2 minutes before we wrap up the show, so I want to give you a chance, obviously, to respond. What is the next step? What is the next move on the part of the Palestinian authorities?
Well, I don't speak for the Palestinian authorities, and I don't support the Palestinian authorities, which have been working closely with Israel for many decades and receiving only insults and more settlements from the likes of Danny Ayalon, quite contrary to his sob story about how much Israel wants to be generous to the Palestinians. Look, the bottom line is this. Israel occupies and rules militarily over millions of Palestinians deprived of their basic rights. All of the fanfare over this deal with the UAE or whichever other dictatorship comes next will not change that reality. It is a mistake to reward Israel for its criminal behavior, for its occupation, for its land theft. The way to deal with Israel is to deal with it very strongly. It must be isolated, it must be boycotted, it must be sanctioned, like apartheid South Africa, in order to end Israel's regime of occupation and apartheid. And although the struggle is difficult, people around the world are seeing that this pariah regime needs to be isolated and needs to be brought into good behavior by confrontation, not by appeasement.
Well, regardless the facts
like
on the ground, thank you, Ali. Regardless, as it is for today, the UAE has agreed to normalize ties with Israel. Obviously, something that we will continue to watch as the story unfolds. Ali, Danny, and Sultan, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your insights. And thank you out there for watching, of course. Hope to see you again next time for a new edition of Newsmakers.